Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Public Policy Program Seminar. My name is Teresa Lund, and I'm the Associate Director for Research here at WAP. And as many of you know, our work at the Women in Public Policy Program focuses on closing gender gaps in the areas of economic opportunity, political participation, education, and health by training leaders, creating knowledge, and informing public policy and organizational practices. We're pleased that you all have joined us today for our seminar on entrepreneurial women, exploring the role of gender in short-term and long-term entrepreneurship with Lakshmi Balachandra. And it's my pleasure to introduce Lakshmi now. Lakshmi is a fellow with the Women in Public Policy Program this year, as well as a visiting professor in entrepreneurship and innovation at Northeastern University. Her research interests include entrepreneurship, decision-making, trust, negotiation, and improvisation. She has taught MBA and undergraduate courses in leadership, negotiation, and entrepreneurship at MIT, Harvard Business School, the Harvard Extension School, Boston College, Babson College, and the University of California at San Diego. Through her research, teaching, and consulting, Lakshmi has worked with a variety of companies, including Deloitte, Genzyme, Goldman Sachs, Novartis, Children's Hospital, and Shell. Prior to her academic career, she worked as a venture capitalist herself. She started a network for women in venture capital and was also an entrepreneur. Lakshmi earned her BA from the University of Chicago, her MBA from MIT, and her MS and PhD from Boston College. Last year, she was a fellow at the Program in Negotiation here at the Harvard Law School, and this fall, she will be beginning a tenure track position at Babson College. Lakshmi, thank you so much for joining us, and I turn it over to you.
Thank you, all of you, for joining us today. Oh, I forgot the microphone. Yes. Now you can, well, you can't hear me, but those in video land can. It's a thrill to present my work to all of you. You get to hear a little bit about my research, and obviously, exciting to talk about gender research as a woman, but also I had a baby in the fall who had a little girl. So trying to think about girl possibilities and women's empowerment, all sorts of things like that. And as Teresa mentioned, you know, my work has been at the individual level. My PhD is in OB, organizational behavior in management, and so I'm really interested in how individuals make quick decisions about other people. So in the negotiation world, you can see where that comes into play. And I translate that into entrepreneurship, and this is where my focus is in terms of entrepreneurship, is how do investors and other decision makers make decisions about entrepreneurs? So what entrepreneurs do they want to invest in? And the picture that I guess Carrie found online for my talk, which is on the website, which I decided to use on my slides here, because it's a great one, my data comes from the MIT 100K competition. And so you'll see more of that in a moment. And the winners here of the 100K competition get $100,000 to start their business. So it's a great opportunity for entrepreneurs to, you know, when they're first seeking capital. And there was a woman in the team here. She just told me I couldn't find who this team was. I don't always see the pictures of the people that have won in the past, but I guess it was 2008. And they actually started a social enterprise, and they now, they just received, I believe, a $100,000 grant from the Gates Foundation. So they are well on their way. So getting into this competition and doing well does great things for entrepreneurs. The last thing I just want to say about my opening slide here is you may have seen on the website that I had entrepreneurial women, ? And my husband basically yelled at me for that. So I've changed that to a nice exclamation point because we are here to talk about entrepreneurial women. Yes, okay. So I'm going to be exploring the role of gender in short-term and long-term entrepreneurship. I'll explain what I mean by that. But I thought I'd start with thinking about the connections to public policy. I know we're in a public policy school here at the Kennedy School. And why should we even think about entrepreneurship? It's typically housed in the business school. You don't see a lot of crossover. Well, I'm going to advocate that, of course, public policy should think about entrepreneurship. And there are lots of well-documented economic development effects when we think about society and the impact that entrepreneurs have in them. And there's a whole host of reasons. There's a lot of new employment that's created by entrepreneurs. In fact, a large majority of new jobs do come from entrepreneurial companies. A lot of regional development occurs when we start thinking about where are we going to house these new companies and entrepreneurs start. So new roads and so on to build to these new office buildings or manufacturing plants and things like that. If we typically have economic power in one area, entrepreneurs now are creating new wealth for a lot of new people. Similarly, wealth creation, GDP goes up, standards of living, all these wonderful things, capital growth. And all of these ideas are really based from Schumpeter. You may have heard of, turn of the century economists thinking about how does innovation and entrepreneurship impact the economics of an area. And I would argue that most policymakers and certainly academics are in general agreement that entrepreneurship is a catalyst for economic growth and for national competitiveness. So we want to encourage entrepreneurship in our society overall. So now, coming back to women, what is happening with women in terms of entrepreneurship and public policy? There's been a lot of research in terms of the role of gender as an important component of entrepreneurship. And I'm going to flag this Diana project here. And if you're interested, I'm happy to give you more resources, or if you haven't heard about them before. But this has been an ongoing project by 5 women faculty at various schools, looking at which women get funded and which don't. What do women do with their startup enterprises? How can we promote more women's entrepreneurship? And similarly, so Diana project was pretty much focused in the United States. The Global Entrepreneurship Monitor is another great resource if you're interested in general in women's entrepreneurship. It's put out by Babson College every year. And what they do is they go globally and collect data on women's entrepreneurship around the world. And some of the findings from the most recent report from December 2011 is that women last year started 104 million businesses worldwide. And this is a good, there's about, I think, 85% of the world's economies are included in this survey. So it's a good proxy for what's happening. 83 million are running established businesses. So in total, we have 187 million businesses that were either started or founded that are in operation, run by women. What they also found is that women are more influenced to start businesses out of necessity. That it's not always, just I want to be an entrepreneur. It's I have to be an entrepreneur for my livelihood. Most economies, almost all of them, all of the countries that they went to, have more men that run these, that are entrepreneurs, except for one. And I was just interested if anyone could guess which country in the world has more women entrepreneurs. In fact, it was surprising to me if anyone has any African scholars here.
Is it Rwanda?
No, it's Ghana. Ghana has, what I included here, I don't know if it'll work for me because I forgot to check it before I came here. Let's see if it'll click to here it is. So Ghana has a wonderful, established, kind of known presence of women entrepreneurs, and they have this great association of women entrepreneurs. They're doing lots of different events and things to promote women's entrepreneurship. So there's a lot of activity around that, which I had no idea, but learn something every day, right? So, but in general, most countries do have more men. And this fact, all of these facts, this, why women start businesses and the fact that there are more men has been occurring for a long time, over 10 years. But the nice finding is that women are equally likely to see entrepreneurship as attractive. They want to be entrepreneurs, but unfortunately it's just not happening at the same rates. So in the US specifically, women actually start up businesses more frequently. We have a faster startup rate, and a lot of these businesses aren't documented because they're often second businesses, so second jobs. So a woman will work, 9 to 5 and then come home and set up like an Etsy shop or something, or set up, daycare or something on the side. But 29% of all businesses are owned by women. But the sad fact, and Teresa mentioned that I worked in venture capital, only 5% of all funding opportunities are equity financing is received by women. And my last job in venture capital was at a women-owned, women-focused venture fund that was focused on trying to solve this problem, trying to get women more dollars. And it was depressing. That was 10 years ago. The stats have not changed that much. So we're still not seeing women get a lot of money. So why the gap? What's happening? Why aren't women getting equity financing at the same rates as men? Well, one explanation is that networks. Women aren't in the same high, the venture capital old boy network that exists out there, and that's one of the reasons why my bosses started the venture fund they did, hoping to build up, a women's community. Wrong sectors. Women are often blamed or saying, oh, women don't start high growth, fast growth ventures. So they're kind of stereotyped or pigeonholed into retail, education, service versus the venture fundable high technology manufacturing. Whether this is true or not remains to be actually seen. I'm not convinced. And in fact, men who start retail businesses are more likely to get funded than women who start retail businesses. Just a side fact for you. Lower aspirations. We're blamed that we don't think big, that we don't put a plan together that says we're going to, conquer the world and come up with a multi-billion-dollar company, Facebook, right? But yeah, sure. Oh, I'm sorry. Questions anytime, please.
Do you think that's still going to be true based on business schools today with women, coming along?
Yeah.
Do you think we're in a generational switch where that won't be true? Because I know in politics, women are thinking of running for president. It's just not the same barrier that it used to be. So I'm wondering if you...
I think it's definitely changing, and I'll show you. Actually, my data speaks right to that. I think it's going to be a lot slower than... I think a lot of these factors have to change, and in fact, if you look at who controls the capital in this country, it's I think it's 95% male. Yeah. So you can't get these effects unless you change multiple factors. So we need more women going into funding and capital jobs and getting in control. Yeah.
I was at a French business innovation conference yesterday, and John Hawthorne was there from Mass Challenge. And, he pointed out that in the last set of applications, I think it was 41% of the women got funded from Mass Challenge.
Wow! Oh, that's great.
Which is cool.
That's great. That's and
hopeful.
Higher statistics than you'll see in my data, but that's wonderful. So yeah, I think as more women enter into these fields, we will see change, and a lot of this I think is also environmental. Like getting into these activities, into these like Mass Challenge, getting involved with some of these entrepreneurship things, being exposed to things will make a big difference. If you're not educated that that venture capitalists want to see $1 billion as your exit, then you're going to seem like you have lower aspirations, even though if you were around or if someone had told you, hey, you need to put in your plan, you're going to make $1 billion, even if you never will, right? How many of these companies actually make $1 billion? But all the guys say it. So I think that's where this "don't think big" stereotype comes from. Is a matter of education. And finally, there's this notion out there that women just don't ask. That and you may have seen the book by Linda Babcock in Negotiation about women don't ask, we don't know how to negotiate, we don't think big, in negotiations. The same idea has been proposed here, that women just don't look for capital. And again, we know that this is not really true because they do ask, right? There are women that show up at venture conferences and enter Mass Challenge and are thinking about how to fund their businesses. So, and in fact, for those of you, who have ever thought about starting a business, the ability to get venture, to be able to attract resources is critical. You have to have capital if you want to grow your business. In fact, this is what capitalism is based on, right? Having capital that will fund businesses and promote growth. Otherwise, we just won't get anywhere. So my research question comes down to this. Since women are asking, we do see women in these environments, and they are starting up more. We see lots of evidence of that. Are there differences between men and women? at this early stage, so thinking very short term, what's going on, what do investors see in terms of men versus women, and do these differences impact whether or not a woman goes on, and the long-term success or pursuit of entrepreneurship or success of the venture once they start the business. So going back to why is this important to think about women and whether they get funded, the OECD had a report in 2004 that was focused on the role of women's entrepreneurship in development. And what they say, you can't read this, probably it's pretty small, but I just bolded important parts here, that women's entrepreneurship is an important untapped source of economic growth. And there exists a market failure due to discriminating against women's possibility to become entrepreneurs. And this market failure needs to be addressed by policymakers. We can't continue to ignore this, that women aren't getting funded at the same rate and that they need to be utilized for economic growth. The KAUFFMAN Foundation, if any of you have heard of them, they're a big foundation based in St. Louis. I won a KAUFFMAN fellowship last year. They do a lot of entrepreneurship for my dissertation. And my dissertation, I'll talk a little bit about that, but I'm not going to share that data, actually, because it's very depressing in terms of gender. I'll get to that. Anyway, they did a report looking specifically at the potential for expanding women's entrepreneurship, how important this is to grow the U.S. economy. And what they were looking at is this notion that women aren't starting high growth ventures. And so they looked at the number of women in the sciences and the number of faculty, the rate of patenting, and the rate, obviously, of women starting businesses. And I didn't even put the results in because they're depressing to me, that women aren't doing these things, right, as the same rate as men, even though we are seeing, as you mentioned, higher numbers in terms of maybe political aspirations. We do see more women faculty. We do see more women researchers in kind of the STEM, science, technology, engineering, management area, but they're not filing patents as much as men are, even though they are publishing papers. So they are coming up with discovery, they are coming up with new technologies, but they're not pursuing the economic, the management, the business end of this work. So there's still a gap. So, but we need to figure out how to get women to do more of these things because it's critical for economic growth. So with that, as I mentioned I'm looking at the startup phase. So I have a series of studies exploring how entrepreneurs pitch their ventures. I told you I'm interested in kind of this interpersonal dynamic. So how do we read other people? What do people do in their pitches? The pitch has been identified in the literature as an incredibly important persuasion process that entrepreneurs have to do. And so my question that I'm focusing on with this data that I'm presenting today is, do women pitch differently? Are there differences in the way that entrepreneurial women pitch? And if so, does that mean more success or failure in the short term and then in the long term? And I mentioned the KAUFFMAN Foundation supported my dissertation work. My dissertation work looked at actual pitches of entrepreneurs pitching to an angel investor group. So these were real people coming in, pitching their business to a group of 30 investors, and they would actually write them big checks. Right? They become investors if they liked the company and did all this due diligence. Why is this data not being presented to you? In my sample, I had 101 entrepreneurs, 2 women, only 2, so not much research possibility there. On the other side, does it make any difference if they're women? I had a total in the sample over the 3 years that I was looking at these videos. I had 85 angel investors and 0 women. So this is the largest angel group in the West Coast and 0. So just to put that out there as why that data is not being presented, and I find it quite depressing, obviously I can't explore gender there. So what did I use to explore gender? Well, first let me back up. I wanted to explain, I wanted to make sure everyone knew what a pitch is, because I know people are maybe coming from business. So a pitch really comes from this baseball image of throwing a baseball, a pitch to someone. And the pitch is what entrepreneurs have to do. They have to be able to explain their ideas, talk about their business to potential catchers. And the catchers are people that could provide all sorts of resources, whether it's investors, in my case, what I'm looking at, the startup money that they could offer, early employees to join the company to, maybe give up a big salary for options and shares, and first customers. Why would you go with a startup company when you could go with some established company? You have to be able to convince people, right, that what you're doing is good and viable. And once again, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to ask. I forgot to say that up front. So I focused on the entrepreneur's elevator pitch. And you may have heard this in other contests, but it's an elevator pitch is a short summary. And the idea is that if you're trapped in an elevator with somebody, you should be able to tell them the pertinent facts about your business in that time frame. So they should be able to leave this elevator ride with you, knowing who you are, what you do. And it's certainly used in hiring, right? If you go to career seminars and things, oh, what's your elevator pitch for yourself? Well, here, this is for entrepreneurs as well. And this is used frequently in investing. In fact, there are lots of seminars given of how to refine your elevator pitch so that as an entrepreneur, if you get trapped with an investor, you should be able to, quickly rattle off what you do so that they get it. And now there's lots of elevator pitch competitions based on this fact. And so, pitch it. This is from Ohio Business Administration, the Development Center in Ohio. Duke has a startup challenge. You could win $5,000. Springboard, which I don't know if people have heard of. Yeah, okay. So Springboard was started as a women's business plan event, right? Being able for women to showcase their business to venture investors. They started a 2-minute competition for women entrepreneurs. Harvard Business School, right across the river, has not only a pitch competition, they've got this whole website. You should really check it out. It's unbelievable. It's called the Elevator Pitch Builder, and you see there, you have 1 minute to explain yourself, your business, your goals, and your passion. Your audience knows none of these. Are you prepared? Can you present your vision smoothly, enticing them to want to know more? And then click to enter, and it helps you go through. It's amazing. So you can build your own pitch. What I used, however, was, as I mentioned, the MIT 100K. And the 100K competition at MIT is one of the oldest business plan competitions in the world, really. It started as, I think, the 25K, became the 50K, and then now it's the 100K. And so students, mostly MIT community people, enter the competition and could win all that money. They started this elevator pitch competition in 2007. And the idea is, come up with an elevator pitch, and they had VCs and come in and judge. So I was able to get data from them. So I thought I'd stop for a moment before I continue into what I found. And I thought I would show you, let me see if I got this right. You could be the judge. I'm going to show you a pitch. And we'll see, let's see if I can get this. Okay. So I'll show you what the pitches look like. These were the videos that I used for my data. And you can see what it's like, and you can see if you think this is a good pitch. Would it win the competition, basically? Let's see if I can get it to go. Oh, it's up here, sorry. Okay. Should go. Before, didn't it? Of course, it's not going to work for me now. That's what I just tried. Uh-oh. Maybe you don't get to see a pitch. Let me try again. Okay, there we go. Here we go. I think we're good now. Maybe you don't get to see a pitch. I'm going to tell you about cars. I can mime it for you. No. It just worked. This always happens, doesn't it?
Or Sarah, would you be willing to give it a try? See if Morgan maybe
Okay.
Dr. wants to go ahead and interview.
Okay. Oh, really? Well, it literally just was working. So I'm like, course. Let me try it again. So typical. If I had picked a guy, maybe it would have worked, right? Okay, we'll...
Maybe if we refresh this one.
Refresh this one?
Yeah.
All right. All my data. No.
So the first rule of pitching is make sure that your videos work.
I'm not pitching. No, we're not getting, I don't know if, it feels like it, well, I guess it is connected. I don't know. Well, I will entertain you with a pitch, maybe if we can get it connected. So, and I was even going to show you a woman, like I said. Do you want to try it, or?
Sure, I'm happy to if you don't need the PowerPoint out.
Let me think.
Yeah.
Try
you
it.
might need to relog in and drop.
I have to relog in, yeah.
It may have timed out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you guys mind? No. Yeah. Okay. If you don't mind, then I'll give it a shot.
Feel free to help yourself this morning.
Sorry.
I would even close that browser.
Oh.
No, you should.
It is.
I don't know if there's a volume thing here. It's not currently higher.
We reduce that drying time to less than 15 minutes, and that initial capital investment of $200 million is flat over year 10 to the done. My name is
You got a sense of it. Yeah. So this is actually not a bad representation because, as you will see, we coded the videos without sound. So yeah, so it was just really to get a sense of what the pitch looked like. I actually wanted you to hear it here, but now you know that it's what we were looking at. I'll explain in a moment. So the data. What did I use to explore pitches? I had these videos of contestants in the elevator pitch competition at MIT, and as you saw, each entrepreneur comes in, they have 60 seconds to pitch their idea. And the idea of this competition is it's a warm-up to the 100K competition. So you get a chance to win $5,000, which is great. But you also have a chance to attract other people to your team because they build teams to enter the overall contest and attract other advice or insight from people in the audience. And there's a series of prizes. There's a $5,000 grand prize. There's two $2,000 runner-up prizes, and then they have an audience favorite $1,000. So this is a good amount of money for, even if you're not thinking about starting a business, you could just win $1,000 for doing a pitch, right? So why not enter? There are 6 industry areas, so you're actually competing against people in your same industry, and they have expert VCs or segment VCs evaluating these pitches in the various rooms. And there are 2 finalists per track. So there's energy, mobile, web IT, healthcare, consumer products and services, and development. And so what I was interested in is there's this focus on, VCs say that they only care about the content, right? They care about the opportunity, and they care about, remember, women don't aspire for building big businesses. So they're really thinking about what people say. So I was curious to see if there was anything aside from that might impact the judge's decision. So if we put aside the content, what's going on? So I had 3 years of videos from MIT. They use these high-quality digital video services to record the pitches from 2007 to 2008. Then I recorded 2009. I went around and put cameras in the rooms because they didn't do that again. So for this project, I used a high-quality digital video, and I had 185 pitches. we transcribed all the videos and we removed all the demographic identifiers from the transcriptions. So you may have seen a company name, but you wouldn't see, his, her, or my, whatever, or any names to identify who the entrepreneur is. And what we did is we took these pitches and we had 2 raters watch all the videos with the sound off. And so we had them code for what we called presentation style. And this was a series of observed behaviors and things, attributes of the entrepreneur that they were rating. And then we used a software program for the transcriptions. So, taking out a lot of the any sort of identifying possibilities and put in, we used to look at the language style is what we called it, or the descriptive language. So for the observed behaviors, how do we do this? We use PANAS, which is the positive affect, negative affect scale. It's widely used in psychology. And we adapted that so that raters would code for affect. So what is your general emotion that you're presenting? And so these are widely used or widely, validated in terms of positive affect, negative affect. And then we included a few more emotions from the PANAS X, which is an enhanced PANAS, positive affect, negative affect scale that they came up with a little later. And then we also looked at just general presentation, public speaking ability. And so this was from a paper that looked at angel investor pitches. We used some of the same qualities that this paper was looking at. So what's the passion? There's been a lot of talk in entrepreneurship literature about how important passion is for the entrepreneur. So we coded for passion, and another paper developed the scale, so we just used that. We also had the raters gauge attractiveness as a control, like how attractive is someone, and presentation quality. So, how much does someone smile? How jittery are they? How much do they walk around? All these things that they say impact the quality of a talk. And if anyone's read, knows the Blink book, Mazar Banaji's work with the teachers and the arm movements, how we make these snap judgments. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, so that you could rate a teacher within 10 seconds of watching the teacher. Yeah, so we looked at some of these things. So these kind of just presentation qualities.
Yeah, I'm a little worried that you only have 2 raters. I mean, doesn't it really depend on maybe you just picked that one rater?
Yeah.
Is there a reason why it's only 2? Is it just because of costs, or?
We varied the raters across all. It wasn't the same 2 people.
Oh.
So so for some of them we had 3. We took averages across all of them. So it was
Gotcha.
It wasn't. How should I put this? We had them code together when they coded on similar. Sorry, we had them code together, develop a coding scheme, and then for that set of data, those 2 coders would do those ratings. So it wasn't the same 2 people for all 185. So we had another set of 2 trained together and do that set. And this was done in chunks. So yeah, it was mostly efficiency. I'm curious if it would make a difference if we had the same people or if we had 3 people, but we didn't do that.
Right.
We found really high inter-rater reliability. Yeah.
No, I think, because I work on attractiveness.
Okay.
That too.
Yeah.
And, we have much less to rate. So in that sense, we can have 30 raters or whatever. But they are pretty consistent, I guess.
They're really consistent, and we were surprised. And we did have them train together. Every time we had them train on a few pitches to see if they were, what the inter-rater reliability looked like. Yeah. And one of the attractiveness measures was height, and that was a total guess. We ended up throwing out that variable and things like that. So ones that we didn't have consistency, we just didn't use in terms of attractiveness. And then with the language, we used software that's actually widely used in political science, Diction. I don't know if people have heard of it. Diction, what Diction does is it takes the language, and they use this for a lot of political speeches, actually. There's been a lot of papers that have looked at speeches by politicians using the software. And what it does is it aggregates the language, and it compares the language that's used with all these loaded dictionaries that it has, and that's where they get the name Diction. And so they've got their own variables, and we selected ones that were about style in the language for the pitch. So these were the variables that we used to code the stylistic language. These are just the summary statistics, which you know, it's too small to read anyway. But what did we find? Well, we find that style matters, and this is overall. This is initially what we looked at. This is nothing to do with gender, obviously, as you see. But nonverbal matters, and what was the most significant variable was how calm the presenter was, which really goes opposite to what you would expect in terms of passion of the entrepreneur, but calmness. And the overall presentation was a very highly correlated with success here to making it to the finals in this competition. And what contributed to overall good presentations was the passion, the displayed passion. You know, wasn't a direct contributor, but it indirectly influenced. Eye contact, attractiveness, we found did matter, and not being awkward. That was one of our, so yeah, so goofy people, I guess. Goofy people.
I'm not awkward.
There are a lot of awkward behaviors, yeah. But remember, this is all with the sound off. So this is just what people are watching on these videos. So how are they coming across without hearing what they're talking about? So, and verbal style, so looking just at the transcriptions again with diction, we found that optimism in the language was very strongly correlated, being less tentative, and this was fascinating to us, but mentioning fewer accomplishments, which seems counterintuitive again with entrepreneurship, that you should be promoting. Remember, we talked about the aspirations that women are presenting, that they're lower aspirations, but you actually shouldn't talk about your accomplishments. So how do you balance that?
Why?
Yeah, we don't know. We have no idea. Our guess is that you can't come across as too cocky. That,
for men and women.
Yeah. That's what
also, all the time you spend on your accomplishment, you don't spend on your actual plans.
Right. Maybe, yeah, they don't want to, it's too much. Maybe it's, sorry? Sorry? Did you? Okay. And so successful pitches, well, we conclude that obviously the pitch is more than just about talking about the facts and the market size and so on, that there are stylistic components that matter. And the overall stylistic approach should be this calmness. While you're presenting well, you have to be a good, confident presenter, but being calm and not too frantic. Optimism, and balance that with humility. So without considering the quality of the opportunity, our style analysis had an increased rate of predicting success by, of getting to the finals by 30%. This is pretty big. So style does matter if you want to pitch well. So what about gender? What did I find? Well, there hasn't been much work in terms of women's behaviors at the entrepreneurial level. So we looked at the gender differences. The problem, again, I mentioned my thesis data had very few women. There were a lot fewer women here as well. We had only 26 women in our sample of 185 pitches. And so the first clear difference is participation, right? But participation on a nuance level, like what you were saying, we do find that, of course, there are fewer women, like we expect in entrepreneurship, but even compared to the number of women at MIT, we're seeing a lot less women enter the competition. So there's been some work on the genetics of women and on environmental influences. So while we might have the same inclinations to pursue entrepreneurship, and we have, obviously we're smart, we're getting into these great schools and doing great work, we're not getting the environmental influence to push us into these new areas, possibly. So I just once before I just want to show you the gender breakdown, right? This was by pitch category. I mentioned the different tracks and the total of 26%. Well, these are the percentages for MIT. So this is I just picked a few of the schools, engineering, management, and science, where you would expect to find a lot of these entrepreneurs to enter the competition. And what you find is that we have almost parity at the undergraduate level at MIT, 45%, pretty big, right? And in fact, 53% at the undergraduate level in science. There's actually more women now in science at MIT, shocking to me. Not shocking to me was the management, the business school. I was an MBA at MIT, and when I was there, it was even in the 20s. There were only 26% women the year I was there. We're now up to 33%, and the total, as you see, is 35%. Which is higher, right? So we're not even getting to the levels of women in MIT. So, sorry.
So my question is, maybe that 26 is underestimating slightly the number, because let's say, I have an idea, and I obviously these ideas don't come to a single person. It's like a team, right? And in a team, I have 2 men, and if I know that there is some reaction, like stereotypically that men get a better reaction.
So it's a selection,
right? So then they select the man to actually present the pitch. Could that be, or? I mean, there's no way to really...
It could be, but probably not here. And the reason is this is an individual competition. So even if you're, even if you don't want to pursue the business, you may as well pitch something, right?
No, but I'm saying that if you came up with the business, you're still in like the team that came up with the business, right? But then you just had a friend pitch it, or you know what I mean?
Could be. I'm less convinced of that with this that's true in the business plan competition where there are and that's how a lot of businesses and a lot of state numbers get inflated for women in the management level, because they're including women as part of the team. So, and this is, there's been a lot of work that shows that they're including women in top management teams that are managers of HR, and they're not decision makers, right? But they're considered management team, and that's not the right way to think about.
That's what I was
thinking.
Yeah,
I'm not convinced here. And in talking to a lot of the entrants, they want to pitch anything, right? They want to they want to get the check, because whether or not they even use it for the business is, who cares at that point? Was there another here? Okay, we'll keep moving. Okay, so other gender differences, what else did we find? There were no difference in performances. In fact, women pitched just as well as men. In fact, they pitched better. We had we did have a significant difference in terms of presentation skill. All of the women in our competition, in our sample, were strong presenters with the sound off, right? The way they present to the coders was very good. And as you saw from what pushes people into the finals, presentation style matters. So this is good news. The other interesting effect we found is when we use gender as a moderator, so not as a direct effect, not to see direct differences, we found that women needed to be, I call this, probably shouldn't say this on camera, but the angry bitches. They need to be, women who are more agentic, that's the term that's used in literature, women who are more assertive, were more likely to be successful. So it's only when it's a woman, however. So this more assertive quality in men did not lead to success. But these agentic characteristics, being more assertive, dominant, confident, aggressive, ambitious, were the types of things that women needed to have in order to be more successful. And so, there's been a lot of work on this in leadership, right? That women need to be more, it's typically considered a male quality, the agentic male. There's been a lot of work on that, old work as well, that's really good. And this work has looked at, even in management areas, that men need to have, that masculine attributes are considered, good managers, people that are more masculine. So, yeah, sorry.
Did you look at the tone of voice as well? Like
we did not.
You did not?
No.
Because some people argue that the
high-pitched tone,
high-pitched tones are less convincing. And less, so I would be interested, because it's of course correlated with gender as well. I would be interested if
that's interesting, but we also, I don't know if you couldn't really tell from this population, but there's a lot of international entrants here. Mm-hmm. So you could argue that there would also be bias with accents, but
especially the tone of voice, because it's correlated with gender. I would be interested to
yeah, that's a good idea.
Effect,
I'll have to check tone. Yeah, I haven't done that.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that contradictory a bit to the humility piece that you mentioned?
Well, but the humility was in the language.
Okay.
So it was just calmness and good presentation in the observed behaviors. It was fewer accomplishments in the, in the length,
Do you have any data on how the responses were perceived by gender? So whether or not those characteristics from a woman were more positively rated
no. So we don't have the judges' scores for this data. I do for 2009, so I can do some. I haven't done that yet. And the judges were mostly men. There were 2 women judges out of the 33 judges. So. That's a good point.
I'm just wondering if you've thought about how your findings that women need to be angry almost.
Yeah, angry.
Sort of interacts with the common wisdom of women in politics, constantly running up against that problem.
In fact, I found a lot of literature on. I love that literature too. I think it's so fascinating, especially since we had Hillary Clinton in the last election and what types of images for women. I love that stuff. And what I found is that there is literature that talks about how women have to be. This recent paper in 2010 was looking at the role of how the gender stereotypes that women support and how that influences their support by voters on what gender issues they support. So if they promote more masculine issues,
about the economy.
Yes, exactly, or war, right? Then it's like, oh, then they get more universal support. So having, I think the agentism translates in that way. So the assertive issues, maybe, or masculine issues, as opposed to just talking about women's rights. Maybe that's my guess right now is a translation. If others have thoughts, feel free to let me know. Okay, so that's in terms of the gender differences, and that's pretty much it. We didn't, like I said, women, there were no differences in presentation, and they were successful at the same rates as men in this competition. So we didn't even, in fact, the woman who you got to watch, well, I should ask, how many of you, what'd you think of her pitch, just watching her, yeah.
I thought it was good. I could only hear parts of it, but she was giving numbers and statistics, and she wasn't like flailing and.
Yeah, exactly. She's calm, right?
Yeah,
calm. She seems pretty confident. Yeah, all of those presentation things. And if you did hear her talk, she does talk about the statistics of what her technology can do. She won. She was the winner. So they're entering the finals at even better rates than they're entering the competition. So we had, I think, 35% finalists out of a 26% participation, but we're getting more to finals, and she won. So it's not holding them back, right? They can win, and we're not seeing bias, I guess, from judges, because that was just from judges. It wasn't it had nothing to do with the audience.
But this is problematic because you're conditioning on the women that already go there, and it's
exactly.
Mediocre males feel fine to
exactly. So we're already getting those women. Yeah, they're already motivated. They're already confident. They're already exactly. So it's a selection issue for sure, definitely. So long-term success. So the other half of this project that no one's really looked at, and which I don't understand why, first of all, just flag that, because this is important in entrepreneurship, is who goes on from these competitions to actually start businesses. We have all these resources channeled towards creating these competitions, putting $100,000 for the business plan competition. I mentioned the picture. MIT is now starting to track alums who start businesses, but not so much from the competition itself. So this is a kind of a side, I guess, tweak or interest of mine is, what's the point of doing this? Are they actually going to start businesses? So what I'm doing now is I'm actually tracking every contestant that enters this competition to see if they start businesses and where do they go. So I've been doing this at 6-month intervals following their entrance, so from 2007 to 2009, and I've had RAs from 2008, we started in 2008, track, did they pursue the venture or not? And so we're looking at company name, did they keep the same name? Did they change the name? Did they incorporate? Can we find any date of incorporation? Do they have a website? Number of employees, if we can find anything like that. And then we're just tracking Google hits. So we're making sure we're getting that person and that company, and we're looking for any press hits to see, it's kind of hard to track people otherwise. Google's great that way. And finally, most importantly for me, are they getting funded? If they enter this competition, they're showing interest, do they actually start the venture, and then do they get money? So just some sample to show you, like I picked a woman who entered in 2007, Patty, she's the CEO of this company, 2008, she was in the competition. This is what they do. They are affordable and reliable power solution to rural villagers in Tanzania. near a source of electricity 2 hours away. So interesting company. Google has mentioned this woman 646,000 times. Her recent press hit, she is apparently at Stanford. She started a company. So she's doing something, right? And then, so initial results, I haven't finished going through all the data. I was just telling Teresa this is great because it got me moving on this stuff again. So some good news. Women are very likely to start businesses. The ones that I'm tracking, almost all of them have started a business, whether or not it is even the one that they pitched. It doesn't seem to, I don't really care, right? But they are actually moving forward. Not as many men. And I'm not clear if maybe men join teams after being in this competition, but the women are starting at higher rates. So my kind of conclusion on this is that once women are introduced or selected into this environment, right, they're very likely to pursue entrepreneurship. They will do it, regardless of if they win or not, right? They're already motivated, they're doing it. So like I said, I'm tracking to see if they get funded or not. The last 5 winners of the business plan competition from MIT have all, except for one of the winners of the 100K have all received funding of some sort. I mentioned the Gates Foundation founded one. Another one just received $8 million of Series A funding from the VCs. Another one has a band of angels that have funded them. So they are moving, right? They do build companies. And Akamai is always touted as the big poster child for MIT's 100K, being clearly a huge success. Huge financial success for everyone. So, but I would like to share with you that I am calmly optimistic. Here's my pitch, that there will be good news. So I will leave it there. So I'm using my Rosie the Riveter as, women in the workforce, that we can do this. Yes?
It would take a lot of money to do this, but it would be interesting. Did you ever see 35 Up, the film?
No. What's that?
It's a UK researcher years and years and years ago. Just a fluky thing. He interviewed kids at 7. And he decided to end up tracking them for 7 years. So there was 7 up, 14 up, 21 up, and went up all the way to 35 up. And you really tracked the evolution.
Wow.
And it would be interesting to work with a filmmaker and on a more...
That would be awesome.
Because it's a visual components. Data, different kind of data, to look at and to hear stories.
Yeah, that would be great.
The women and what did they feel,
That would be fabulous. That is such a good idea. And I think it would be easy to do now, especially, I'm joining Entrepreneurship at Babson, which has all these women's resources. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Are you familiar with a group called Astia in San Francisco?
Yeah.
I used to volunteer with them, so Sharon was the CEO, and then Patty Gray, and all the names. I was emailing them. Because another thing that they found in terms of networks is also just policy in general. And I'm not as familiar with it, but some of the policies around getting women funding actually could be sort of not manipulated, but changed so that women are more likely to become recipients of investment. So they have an annual summit that switches between New York, London. It's called Beyond It.
And that's one of the problems, I think, because like I was saying with how companies can claim to have a woman in top management, even though they're not really in top management, right? They're in the hiring process, which isn't part of the management or strategic decision making, and they can claim that they have a woman on their team, and so they're eligible for some of these funding resources, which technically they shouldn't be, right? So, there's some challenges there, but
they do this on not in a school scale, so they do it for adults, and it's really cool because they'll do it in San Francisco, and I watch their pitches.
Oh, they have a pitch company,
And so they'll go through a whole competition, and basically what they do is say we have pre-selected these women and these ideas multiple rounds, and then they bring them to angel investors, VC, Series A, whatever. Yeah, it's really cool.
I was just at Babson last Friday for the National Federation of Teaching Entrepreneurship, and they're housed there. I think, I'd love to connect you with that group.
Okay.
Because I think it would be for the next generation.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, happy to. any other questions or suggestions too as well? Yeah.
Do you know what happened to the woman who won the pitch the competition that you showed us?
I don't. You know, I forgot to look up what she did. We're tracking her. But yeah. I'm pretty sure she started a business. I mean, almost all of the women did. So she did something. Whether or not it was the same business, because some of them have done something different than what they pitched. But I forgot to check on her. That was, thanks. I'm going to have to make sure what she did. Yeah.
I'm wondering if, sort of in future studies like this going forward, if maybe it's possible to elicit a CV or something from the speakers to try to get at that question of, are only the women who are above and beyond the best the ones who are self-selecting in and then being chosen at proportional rates? And maybe do like the resume studies that so many people have done with no name, have them rate the qualifications of this person as an entrepreneur.
It's a fabulous idea. So to take the CV and then have it blind assessed. The problem, a little bit of a problem with that, or if you can think of a way to tweak it, because with entrepreneurship, I'm not so sure how important the CV is.
Right, because it's all about your interaction.
Yeah, and about the business opportunity. So that's why we took out a lot of the personal or demographic identifiers of the pitch itself. And we also, what we did for the first half in identifying the stylistic qualities is we took out, Sandy Pentland, who's at MIT, he's in the Media Lab. He has a book that was out in, I think, 2009 called Honest Signals. And what he's done, have you heard of this thing called the jerkometer? No? Okay. So they've, the Media Lab's coming up with all these funky technologies to assess, interact with humans. And so what he came up with is this, or his labs, some of his grad students, is this device that can measure tone and the way people speak. So it's not looking at the quality of the words or anything, and it'll rate how much of a jerk that person is. You can tell just from tone. Yeah. You don't need it, right? But so he did this other study where he looked at pitches, a very small sample, but and this is the anecdote that starts the book, is that he has these devices of, so you would wear one and I would wear one, and when we meet at a cocktail party, it measures how much our arms move and how much we're looking at each other and how close we are. And so based on all these interactions, it comes up with the measure of how much we like each other, or how in sync we are. There's all these mutual syncness that he has in these little devices. So he did that with VCs looking at pitches, and so he was able to predict who would win or who the VCs would be interested in based on these kind of, how much are they watching the person? Are they leaning forward? Is this kind of mutual interest? So the idea is, it doesn't matter what you say, right? That there's the way you present and the way you're being responded to can have an impact. So what we did, and he also, he took the pitch and gave it to VCs aside from watching the person and have them rate them to see, would you invest in this company? And they don't match, right? So the ones that they watch and the ones that they read about are not the same. So we did that with our pitches. We took the pitch and we distilled it down to basically 10-word phrases, because we are convinced that stylistic language matters too. So we tried to get to the core of the economic opportunity, which is what VCs say they invest in, right? The market and that there's growth. So we did that, and we had no overlap with, successful pitches at all. Because each track had 10 or 12, one track had 35. Can you pick the winner? Which one would be successful to the VCs in the room, and they never overlap. Yeah.
Even though you just described mostly non-verbal cues, I think it's relevant to describe something that I did years ago when I was interviewing a lot of undergraduate school. I decided to figure out what was the difference between male speech and female speech. I did that by watching the real music. And I realized that the same words that women use as underliners are the words that men use as belittlers. Like really and just. I really think we need to. I just think we have. And then, I really don't think. I just don't think. And also, men began a lot of their statements with adverbs. Basically,
Really?
That's no. We're actually looking at gendered language itself, because there's I guess there's different. I don't know the coding very well, but we're looking into that. So that's a great idea. Lakoff. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm just. It's very fascinating topic, by the way. And,
thanks.
Since Susan Hookfield, the MIT president,
yeah.
I'm a researcher, and I really know her personality. She's a very great woman of humility and woman of power and knowledge, and really she has everything really extraordinary. And I see also the progress really every time there she made, and
it makes a big difference having women in these roles. I'm convinced of that. Yeah.
I wonder, and then I heard last month
she's leaving. Yeah.
I really cried, and I just don't know why, but you know, and I'm just worrying who's going to replace her.
I know.
I wish who's going to be a woman who is willing, because you know, she really improved everything for everybody. She's not even she really doesn't
it's
make any difference. She does all people equally.
Yeah.
And she's a very decent, quiet, smart, and brilliant human being. And
do you know why she's leaving? Is it?
I have no idea. I'm just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
My worry is who is going to replace
Yeah.
her.
I know, it does make, it makes such a difference having a woman, you know, example. In fact, it's what's been funny, you know, I've been running around these competitions now for a few years, and so now it's, when I was at MIT, Sloan did not manage the 100K competition, but now it's almost all Sloan MBAs who run the competition. And so I'm hanging around with these students for the few years I was doing this, and there was one woman every year. You know, it takes like 30 or 35 people to run this thing, and there's only one girl who's part of this kind of leadership. And I'm like, where are the women? Like, why aren't they leading this competition? You know, women are great managers. They're very good at organizing these sorts of things, and yeah, it's amazing. It's very male dominated, the competition, and even the elevator pitch competition I was mentioning. There's one girl one year, and the next year she graduated. So I think it's important to have women in leadership roles, even in these sorts of early stage, competitions. And I mentioned my venture fund; it's no longer in existence. So, having women in venture funding roles is incredibly important, because I think that's one of the big hurdles. As I mentioned, men control most of the cash, most of the equity capital that's even available for entrepreneurs. Yeah, sorry.
So this might be kind of
another
topic, but I watch Shark Tank.
Yeah, yeah.
And so one of the contributors on there, they had a woman at one point, and now they have she's like the president of QVC or something like that, and it's really refreshing to see her. And I feel like there's this new presentation of women in this powerful role of being able to provide this funding. Though I'm finding that there aren't as many women who come up and do their pitches to ask for the money, but at least we're seeing kind of like a shift, because at one point it was like all men, as the sharks or whatever.
Is it Barbara Corcoran?
She was before, right? That was a real estate woman?
Yeah.
Yes.
She was on there for a while.
But now there is a woman on there who's like the head of QVC, I guess.
Which Shark Tank?
Shark Tank is where basically inventors go to pitch their ideas and get money.
It's a TV show.
Yeah, it's a TV show.
They started, the UK started this show called Dragon's Den, and that was what it was based. And then they brought it to Canada, and now they started Shark Tank in the States, and so they have these like billionaires that can be angel investors. So it's a pitch show. The companies come in with their either PowerPoint or an example of their product, and they pitch to potential funders. And there's been research papers using Shark Tank data and Dragon's Den data the problem with those shows is that the producers are really culling for interesting, silly, often companies. So they want things that are going to be interesting on TV. So I don't. But the exposure they get by just being on the show is, is huge. So, yeah.
I might have missed at the beginning. Is your PowerPoint slide presentation available online?
It's not. I haven't.
Could it be maybe on the WAP website, or how would that work?
I don't know.
We're open. If you'd like, we'd be happy to share it with people who are interested.
Okay. That's fine.
If you want to do that, if you want to send an email afterwards. Okay. Maybe a PDF version.
Okay. Sure.
And this presentation is going to be 50 videotaped, so it's going to be up on YouTube.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So.
Do you feel like all this data has affected your leadership style and your style of presentation?
I'm certainly a lot more calm, right? I have learned from my research. It's funny you say that, because I have fought researching gender throughout my PhD. Like that's I think why I focused on entrepreneurship, and I've done things in improvisation and negotiation, so I haven't been tied to gender at all. And mostly because I was really depressed from a lot of my experience in venture capital as a woman. I went to business school and I didn't want to go back. So, and I feel like, as I do this research, I get a little depressed by it, because I feel that it's, I don't think there's enough progress being made as fast as there should be. And I don't really know what to do about it, because, like you were saying, the women that are in this competition, they're selecting it, and they're good, right? They're doing really, they're winning these competitions, they're putting really good businesses together. And in fact, when I worked in venture capital, one of the VCs at a big fund was saying, we'd love to invest in more women. And we used to fight over women, the women that would come to us for, technology growth capital, because no venture capitalist invests alone. So it's, even though we have this women's fund, we would still need another VC to invest with us. So you're still part of that old boys network. I don't know. Yeah, but I feel like it's also, like, the women I went to business school with, very few of them are starting businesses. In a lot of ways, I feel like it goes back. There's other societal issues happening, right? So it's not just about this, but, women have a lot more to deal with, rather than just worry about getting funding and starting the business. And stereotypes they face? I don't know. Maybe, yeah.
These were all for-profit businesses?
No. In fact, one of the tracks, the development track, is social enterprise.
So that was one of the 6 categories.
Yeah. She was the winner. That woman was in the energy track. So that was a for-profit. But development, one of the winner of last year's business plan competition, the one that won $100,000, was this company called Sanergy. And they were a social enterprise. They are basically putting toilets around the world. These, environmental ways to have toilet facilities in developing nations. So.
I have a question. So a couple people have echoed this sort of like the next generation wisdom. We've seen in other sectors that doesn't come out to be true.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you know a little bit of the data I wouldn't know about, specifically women in entrepreneurship. Have the numbers been going up?
Yes. The rates of entrepreneurship are definitely, they're doubling, in fact.
Okay.
But the rate of funding is not going up.
Right.
So, and I wonder, excuse me, if that's related to, like Etsy, if people know Etsy, right? So that's counted as a business, but that's certainly not one that perhaps a venture capitalist would fund, right? So they're starting a lot of businesses, but it's not, and so some of that, why is this happening is, it's in the wrong sector. So it's not big manufacturing plant or, so I don't know. I'm not seeing that so much. But the good news is, like I said, the number of women in the undergraduate level anyway, even in the sciences, is a lot higher. So if we want to see the fast growth, management, science, engineering,
So the potential is there. Women are educated enough to do it, but just like there being parity with women in law school, that does not translate into women in leadership.
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, Babson is very lucky to have
you. Oh, thanks.
With that, we'd like to thank you so much.
Thank you.